For centuries, humanity has dreamed of taking the car to the skies, but just how could this be done? This is the question that has plagued scientists, manufacturers, and historians alike. What exactly is this technology for, and how can we use its past to learn about the future? Let me take you on a journey through history to learn more about the flying car. How do we build gravity-defying cars? Would traffic be totally eliminated if cars were off the ground? And how exactly do we regulate who can go where? So many questions exist about contemporary technology related to the flying car that they obscure and overshadow its surprisingly rich history. Believe it or not, the first designs of flying cars can be traced back to the mid 19th century. In 1841, William Samuel Henson patented this flying car. Although he was never able to build a functional version of his monoplane, the design is a significant indication that the theory of the flying car was becoming more real than ever. 70 years later, Glenn Curtis's airplane debuted at New York's 1917 Pan Am Aeronautical Exposition. The autoplane had an aluminum body, plastic windows, and even a cabin heater. However, World War I prevented test trials of the plane and it never flew. Nevertheless, it is important to recognize the improvements in design and overall technological features. By this point in history, we can draw parallels from the Industrial Revolution that has taken place in the US. The effects the Industrial Revolution has on technology cannot be overstated. The increased frequency of development within the car and aviation industries begins with Ford's assembly line, which led to massive undertakings in these industries, sometimes integrating the two systems. In 1947, 100 years after Henson's theoretical flying car, Theodore Hall designed the Convair car that took its only test flight that November in the skies of California. Although the plane crashed due to low fuel and Hall was never able actually to retest his design, we can see exaggerated efforts to integrate two technological systems. The Ford Mach 1 Levacar epitomized sleekness, efficiency, speed, ease, comfort, and separation from nature, all values that embody the principles of the future. Shown at the Ford Rotunda in 1959, this single-seat car had no wheels and advertised a top speed of 500 miles per hour. But of course, who can forget the Jetsons? The show, which only aired for one season in 1962, became a societal benchmark for progress and innovation. The show depicted a utopian future complete with houses in the sky, robots capable of performing multiple tasks simultaneously, and cars that look eerily similar to flying saucers. The Ford Pinto combined with the Cessna Skymaster, seen above, looks similar to the Convair car designed 30 years earlier. The prototypes of the car were made by sawing up a Cessna Skymaster airplane and a Ford Pinto and literally combining them. The controls were adapted so that they drove the car on the ground and the plane in the air. The concept of flying cars even translated into flying fire engines. Makes sense, right? Why design 100-foot ladders when you could simply bring the firemen and hoses right to the source? Technology was considered to be an agent of beneficial change and a guarantor of progress. It is during the mid-20th century that we see the most ardent advocates for increased technology in all aspects of life. We as an audience start getting a sense for the social context of the time period that these illustrations were made. Note that the male is always the one in the driver's seat. The idea of man at the wheel is even apparent in the Jetsons. George is always the one to drive the car, but the one episode Jane drives, they get pulled over by a space cop. In this depiction of the Sunray sedan, again note the male driving the car. The idea highlights the fallacy of social continuity, which assumes that technology will advance while reinforcing social norms of the time period. While this car was not intended to leave the ground, it undoubtedly had an effect on the eco-friendly automobile industry. Earlier in the presentation, I talked about the integration of technological systems. This helicopter of the future depicts just that. Incorporating designs of both the helicopter and the airplane, the design intended for a strictly vertical liftoff so that the driver would not need a long distance to accumulate enough speed. As noted in class, the proposition to create transportation that was unhindered by gravity defined the future. Not only has the flying car permeated advertising throughout the decades, but it is a popular technology used in futuristic movies. Here, a spinner is shown in Takeoff from the movie Blade Runner. Set in November 2019, Blade Runner highlights the significance of improved technological capabilities in regards to the flying car so that good may always triumph over evil. And while flying cars weren't the norm on October 21st, 2015, as predicted in Back to the Future Part 2, it is apparent that filmmakers put a premium on having the technology depicted in the film. Interestingly, producer Bob Gale knew that flying cars would not exist in 2015, but recognized that their inclusion in the film would make a killing at the box office. Everyone remembers the iconic flying car scene from Harry Potter. The idea of flying cars stimulated the minds of millions of young children and broke the mold of the traditional portrayals of flying cars, which had previously only been seen in utopian and dystopian films. Although powered by magic, Ron Weasley's flying car made the goal of making flight as easy and accessible as road travel conceivable in the near future. Today, there are various prototypes of flying cars that integrate a wide array of technologies. For example, the Audi Calamaro, seen above with no discernible propulsion mechanism, has been described as using a type of fusion to power the car through the air. While no test trials have been performed over the next several years, Audi has pledged to make serious attempts to complete a testable model. AeroMobil, a Slovakian company, has invested tens of millions into designing a hybrid vehicle called AeroMobil 3.0. Whether you classify it as a flying car or a road plane, AeroMobil 3.0 has proven that it is capable of flying with a range of over 600 miles and can reach top speeds of 124 miles per hour. For a generation of baby boomers, the flying car has been nothing shy of disappointment. They grew up invested in the idea that eventually, flying cars would be the main source of transportation. As you sit here listening, keep repeating the ever-important question, what is this technology for? To all the naysayers, we must avoid presentism and consider the fact that the world may look very different in 10 to 20 years from now. As with all socio-technical systems, it is imperative that we consider the flying car within the greater context of society. For instance, what are the benefits and repercussions of having millions of people all of a sudden take to the air? How does this change affect the environment, and what's to become of the extensive highway systems? All these questions and more need to be answered thoroughly if we hope to have the childhood dreams of millions realized.